How exciting is it to be back, and how exciting is it to have Josh Warrington out in his first fight on a Matchroom bill since he came back?
Very exciting. I mean, not under the circumstances we would have wanted or expected, but for this, for Matchroom personally, a run of 12 shows over 8 weeks in 7 different countries is crazy. Weird for Josh Warrington. When we signed him, we had a press conference up at Headingley. We were getting ready for a massive fight in front of 25,000 people at Kanzu in the summer, and of course then the world fell apart. For someone that sells tickets like Josh Warrington, the pandemic's been very difficult for him, because obviously his deal is reflected on the size of the gate, and that evaporated. So it's been frustrating. We waited, and then we said we've got to get going. And Kanzu didn't want to do the fight behind closed doors, and I think there's a lot of pressure on him this week, because he sits there having made a decision, a brave one in my opinion, to vacate his belt, to chase the big fights. He's behind closed doors. He's expected to win against a rather unknown challenger, but a challenger that we know quite a lot about. People quite fancy him. People say that he's a huge puncher. And just when you talk about banana skins, this could be one, because everyone's saying, when's the Kanzu fight? When's the Gary Russell fight? When's the Navarrete fight? I'm like, Mauricio Lara this weekend. Just get the business done, and then you can go out and make the mega fights.
He's at that stage now, obviously, number one in the world, 30, sort of not interested anymore in anything other than huge fights, and obviously get this one out of the way, so to speak. But then he has no problem listing the names that he wants. How easy do you think it's going to be to get those names that he wants? Kanju, Gary Russell, Navarrete, Santa Cruz, people like this.
I think it's going to be straightforward. I saw a journalist today say, well, he doesn't have a belt anymore. It doesn't matter.
Is that an issue?
No, not in the slightest. He's number one in the division. He's going to win the Ring Magazine title. So if you want to prove you're the best, you have to beat Josh Warrington. So I think we're in a position now where Kanzu is the fight for the end of April, early May. And then I love the Gary Russell fight, but again, he's nuts. He boxes once every 3 years and wants a fortune. Navarrete, I believe, is a guy that will fight Josh Warrington. That's a huge fight. And then I see Josh moving up to 130 and fighting Jojo Diaz's and the other champions. Bachelt is an incredible fight as well. But honestly, with Josh, of course, every fighter wants to make the maximum money they can. He just wants the big fights. This is a boxing fan that's number one in the world, and he wants a legacy. And he's got that by beating Selby at Ellen Road and Frampton, but he wants to go out globally and box the very best, become a 2-weight world champion, win the Ring Magazine belt. And our job, the pressure's on us to deliver that. But again, first things first, Saturday night.
And like you say, it's the start of a mad schedule, not only in this country, but for you across the globe. Obviously, testing times for a lot of people and a lot of sports. How is it that you've been able to grow from this? And like you said, and I've read it in the boxing news, that boxing at the moment is bigger than ever, which sort of is at odds with the rest of the world, and certainly sporting markets. How has that managed to happen?
Well, we've been able to grow, but we've been able to maintain the momentum of boxing, but we've been able to put a product and a format together behind closed doors that's sustainable and that works. We all know that we've built boxing off huge crowds and Sweet Caroline and everyone having a great time and dressing up. We lost that, but we were able to produce and tell the story of a compelling sport even behind closed doors. You look at Whyte Povetkin, you look at Taylor against Pursoon, you look at so many great fights that we've had behind closed doors, and we've kept the momentum worldwide. We signed Canelo Alvarez, we started doing shows in Italy and Spain, and now we have this schedule. Like I said, we've got a show in New Zealand coming up with Parker against Farr. So for us, we've used it as an opportunity to put the foot on the gas when others have used it as an opportunity to just say, whoa, we can't run this sport like this. Well, we can. In fact, if we never have another fan inside an arena, we've built a sustainable sport within that format. Now, that would be horrible for me, because I love having fans there, and money aside, that's what we live for, that buzz. But to put boxing at the top of that pedestal, like you say, of sports that have grown during the pandemic, I think is a massive achievement. And by the way, not just us, Top Rank have done a great job, Warren's put on shows, Golden Boy put on some great shows, so everyone's trying, everyone's pushing, everyone's evolving. But it's been a great challenge, and I think as the vaccination numbers increase, as the new cases drop, I think we're on the verge. I really do. I see some good news coming, and I see this summer crowds returning. Maybe they won't return as willingly as they did previously. It will take time to re-educate people and get people into that routine of going to live events. But like I said, we're okay because we can survive and grow even in this format, and I think that's been great for the sport.
And one fight, obviously it's a packed schedule over here for the next few weeks. One fight I wanted to ask about was Dillian Whyte against Alexander Povetkin, which obviously has fallen out of bed a couple of times. What's the latest on that? I remember you told us that it might go to Gibraltar. We don't know a venue. Like, what's the sort of state of play
we're looking at? I mean, we do have the issue.
Why Gibraltar?
Just as an option, you know, we've staged events there before. We've had pool events there, darts events there before. The main issue we have at the moment is Portugal, which is Dillian Whyte's camp, is now on the red list. So he would because there's no elite athlete exemption from the red list countries at the moment, he would have to isolate in a government hotel for 10 days on his return. So unless he comes back this weekend, he would have to go into a government accommodation, which is not on the agenda. His other option is to go into another country now to break camp and isolate there before returning to the UK. So it's not ideal, but we have to overcome it. We have to come up with the right move. If we went to Gibraltar, that would eradicate any problem of breaking a camp and because he would just drive to Gibraltar. Yeah, exactly. So that's an option. Logistically, it's very tough, but we can do it because we can do anything. So we're just literally on the phone today, tonight, and we will make a call over the weekend as to where this fight will take place. But March 6th is absolutely the date.
It does beg the question, though, why wouldn't Dillian come back now?
Because he's having a great camp.
If the fight's riding on it, it doesn't matter how good the camp is.
Well, if the fight's riding on it, he will come home. Right. But if the option's there to stage it 3 or 4 hour drive from where he is, that would be more ideal. Yeah. So I think that because this fight is so important, because this fight is everything for the career of Dillian Whyte, do you want to pack up now and move? When, hold on, you know, my sparring's here, I can't get people into that country, they can't come with me. Or, you know, you have to be quite mentally strong to say, okay, no problem, let's go. We've got to do what we've got to do. But ideally, we'd like to exhaust all options before we make that decision.
And Alexander Povetkin, I don't want to sort of speak out of turn, he obviously had COVID, had problems with it. I believe he went into hospital twice because of it. Have you had updates on his fitness? Obviously, we know the nature of COVID and what it does to the body. How is he? And
great. I mean, one thing about Andrei Rybinski and World of Boxing, you know, we originally planned this fight for the end of January, and they come on and said, we have to be honest, he needs a little bit more time. Yeah. And when he got clearance from the doctors to start training again, he had, I think, 11 weeks. He's done half of his camp, and now he goes into hard sparring. Or last week he did that, and he's in great shape. You know, looks great. I've seen pictures of him. They would never let him go into this fight unless he was 110% because they want to win so bad. I mean, you know, you heard them at the last fight celebrating. They love it. They love boxing, and this is a massive fight for Povetkin. You know, he wins this fight, he's going to be WBC mandatory, and you know his career is in an unbelievable position. So must win for both, and both of them will be 100% going in.
Moving on to other heavyweights. I know you don't want to talk about it too much anymore, but Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury. You had Anthony Joshua in the office this week, meeting with him. How is he? How's it all progressing?
He's fantastic. I mean, he hasn't stopped working since the Pulev fight, and he's just loving boxing. He's quite enjoying lockdown because he's so robotic, really, at the moment in camp and in his approach. You know, we get asked every day, how long, where's it at? And all I can say is we're finalising the finer details. A couple of chats about those yesterday. Nothing major that we see is going to stop this fight from happening. And, you know, as always, the plan has been to get both fighters to sign, announce it to the world, and then go and finalise the site details with all these approaches that we've had, because I don't want to go through that process without having both guys signed. And that's the first stop, and hopefully we're not too far away.
You say first stop, but surely beyond that, like the country for a start, and obviously then the venue is also a colossal problem and hurdle to get over. So how far away are we?
In what respect?
Because, you know, getting the fighters to sign and agree to terms is fine, but, you know, surely that's dependent on where you go because of...
No, not really. I mean, ultimately both fighters have to agree where you go, but that will come down to the best site deal.
Would you normally do, is that normally the order you would do it? And
get a fight of this size sometimes, but yeah, this is quite unique. I mean, it's the biggest fight in boxing, one of the biggest fights of all time. But the problem is when you have a dozen site approaches from 15 different people, that job is quite, you know, it involves a lot of work to go out and start negotiating, putting time into escrow agreements, legal agreements, until a fight is actually done. And I don't want to waste the time of those people until the fight is signed. We know several of the people that have approached us, and I trust them implicitly to deliver a deal if it's there. And that task will probably start next week. Even I'm not saying we have to wait until both fighters have actually signed a contract, but we need to know that everything's overcome, terms are agreed, the finer details are signed. Let's sign it this week, and we'll start. And we have been starting, to be honest with you. I mean, I can't tell you that I haven't been in deeper discussions with sites, because we want to get moving. And a lot of the dates now depend on the COVID situation, because originally wanted May. We feel like June is a safer option. But different countries are at different stages, aren't they? Some countries are in lockdown, some countries are open. So
well, Saudi just went back into lockdown. Is that a concern? Because as we understand,
they had the golf there last week, right. The European Tour. They've got Formula E coming up in a couple of weeks. So they are staging major events, but at the moment behind closed doors. I believe they plan to open up in March. But again, you just don't know what's going to happen. Las Vegas opening back up again, what it looks like in May. So this would be a huge opportunity for them to get the biggest fight in boxing. Singapore, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, all these countries want to stage this fight, and we have to go through that process once the fight is signed.
Can we safely assume that Vegas, particularly New York, but the American sites now can't really compete financially with the sort of money that's on offer in the Middle East?
Probably. I mean, subject to the fact that these people are going to have to do something. Yeah. Las Vegas has been dead for a year. It's brutalised the market there, and they're going to have to come out fighting. And if it's open in May, well, they could land a fight in June, and I wouldn't mind a trip to Vegas in June for this fight. I think it's a great home for it, but we can't ignore the seismic offers that we've had from other areas in the world, and it's our obligation to the fighters, as per the contract, to deliver the maximum value for them in this fight.
Obviously, it's rumbling on a bit. Is there any danger that it's not the next fight?
No. I mean, listen, I said in an interview, I think it's Boxing News, we're not talking about, there's no interest. I don't know what we'd do if we didn't fight Tyson Fury, to be honest. Like, normally I would say, well, if this doesn't happen, but everyone is so focused to get this over the line. This is the fight, this is the moment, and you will get it.
Now, one cloud that's sort of come over this fight in recent days really, is obviously the Daniel Kinahan situation, since the BBC Panorama about him and his alleged involvement with a drugs cartel. He's Tyson Fury's advisor, has been for some time. How difficult has that been to handle? It's obviously become a big story now around boxing, and in your position as quote unquote the most powerful man in British boxing, as they said on the
that was a good bit about it.
But what does that do for your job, this whole situation now?
I think that firstly, anything that's negative towards the sport of boxing is not great. We talked about how we've been growing the sport in the pandemic, how it's in such a great place. The story itself, we experienced it last year, didn't we? When Tyson Fury came out and thanked his advisor, and we will work with whoever we're told to work with by a fighter that we're trying to make a fight for. And in that case, Daniel Kinahan was advising Tyson Fury. Because of the furore, we know that he stepped back from that position. All our conversations are now with Bob Arum. But it has highlighted, of course, we know he represents other fighters, and he's been an advisor for some time. I think that what the documentary did is opened the story up to a bigger audience, but everybody in boxing knew the story last year. So I don't feel that it taught us anything new. I think alleged was a good word that you used there, and we're so focused on making the fights, we don't have any say over who a fighter appoints to represent him, and we shouldn't, by the way, because it's a conflict of interest for us. So from my point of view, all our dealings right now for that particular fight are with Bob Arum and Top Ring.
Last one on this suggestion that regardless of what's true and what's not and what can be policed or whatever, suggestion that it's bad for business. Is that how you see it in any way, that, like you say, it's now opened up to the general public and non-boxing people are going, what is this all about? Is that bad for business, or is it business as usual?
I'll say negativity and bad press is never good for a sport, but I believe the sport is in a fantastic place. I think you've seen comments from other fighters and fighters that he might represent as well. And to be honest, we're so focused on continuing the growth of the sport. Right now, we're in a fantastic place. I do feel that, you know, and this isn't directed at you, Dec, but there has always been the people who want to stop the progression of boxing, and you know, boxing is finished. This is the end of boxing. Boxing is in the biggest place it's ever been globally. You know, we sit at a moment where the UFC has done such an incredible job to build a brand and become such a hugely valued business and TV product, yet doesn't have anywhere near, in my opinion, the history, you know, the global exposure, the global ability that boxing does. So, of course, you know, we want to ride this out. We want to keep the positivity and keep the momentum of the sport. So for me, you know, we want to make the biggest fights, and you know, again, fighters will appoint people to represent them. And whilst that is the case, and whilst these advisors are operating, then that's what will continue to happen within the sport.